Okay guys, today I'm going to show you how to make data cables. I am a certified copper and fiber instructor, and one of the things I like to do is to make walkthrough videos to show you guys how to do things that we do in the IT field all the time. If you're going to make data cables and put on RJ45s, these are registered Jack 45, sometimes called a 8P8C, 8 position, 8 conductor. Then you need to make sure that you're using the right kind of cable. This is horizontal cable or riser cable. And as you can tell, it's solid core. This is meant to go into walls or ceilings, something for long runs. It's not made to go into one of these RJ45s or 8P8C connectors. The reason being is the little pins that are inside look like a fork, 3 or 4 prong, and whenever you crimp this, the prong has to go through and it pierces the jacket, the insulation on the outside of the wire, and it goes into the cable. With a solid core cable, it can't pierce the copper, so it doesn't go all the way through. And you want to make sure that your cables aren't going to back out over time, so you want to make sure that you are using the right kind of cable. So as you can see in this one, this is solid core, solid piece of copper. This is riser cable. If you're wanting to make your own patch cables, you want to make sure that you're using the right kind of cable. This one is a stranded. This one is made for patch cables. So as you can see there, each individual strand of copper that will allow that connector to go through cleanly. And you won't have as many connection issues. So I'm going to cut this off. I just did this pre-video to show you guys how to do it and what it looks like. So one of the first things you want to do is set your strippers properly. I always set the strippers so that they barely cut through the jacket. And as you can see, it did not cut clean through. I don't want it to. If it cuts clean through, then it has potential to cut through the copper, or cut into the copper. I don't want it to do that. So what I do is I get it where it cuts the insulation part of the way through, and then I just bend it till it snaps and breaks off. This is a piece of Cat 6 patch cable, and as you can tell, has the channel in the middle to keep your pairs separated. I always start off with a good 2 to 3 inches of cable coming out, stripped off. As the old saying in telecommunications, copper's cheap, labor's not. So if it takes you a long time to make cables, it's costing money. I'd much rather waste a couple of inches of copper cable than have to waste a bunch of time trying to make one. So we're going to be using the T568B standard. B is used in enterprise, commercial installations, things of that nature. As long as we're using B standard on both ends, it'll be a straight through cable. If you're going to make a crossover cable, it'll be a T568A on one end and a T568B on the other. So we're going to separate these out. I'm going to show you guys how I do this. I've literally made thousands of cables. So I'll show you the easiest way that I found to do it. So we want to separate our wire pairs, this being pin 1 and pin 2. And I always separate these out down to the jacket. I've seen a lot of the old telecom guys, especially if they've done telephone installations before, they will have this much wire hanging out of the jacket, and it'll all be separated out. The twist needs to be in there, because if the twist isn't there, then you're going to get a lot of crosstalk. Depending on which end you're looking at, it'll be near end crosstalk or far end crosstalk. And crosstalk means that you're losing electrons as they're flowing down the wire, and they have to be resent. So we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that our gigabit or 10 gigabit connection is being able to push as much data as possible. So we'll separate these out properly. You should only have a quarter inch of cable that's untwisted before it actually hits the connector. And you guys can see where on this RJ45 on the side here, your jacket should stop right here, and then you have approximately a quarter of an inch before it actually hits the connector by standard. I'm going to separate these out. And whenever I put this in there, you'll see we only have approximately 1/4 of an inch of cable that's untwisted as it goes up. And what the twist does is it makes sure that if electrons do hop off of one wire, they do shoot out the side, float off into the ephemeral space, that they don't jump onto another wire. It's one of the twists are there. And the more twists, the higher speed rating of the cable. So what I've done is I've gone through and I've separated these out. So we've gone from pin 1, white orange to white green to blue to white blue to green to white brown to brown. So we have pin 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. So what I typically do with these is and I show my students, I will separate them out all the way down to the jacket, make sure that everything is nice and separated, nice and clean. And then I will pinch the end of the cable like this, and what this does is it keeps everything separated. And then I pull the cable down, never actually taking my hands off of the individual wires. So I have one hand on there at all times to make sure that the wire stays separated and it stays in the right order, because you don't want them crossing over each other. So then I will cut off, and typically what I use is my thumbnail for the length. Get a pair of lineman scissors. That's what these are, made for cutting copper. And you'll trim those off nice and flush all the way across. Now you see we have all of our cables in order. If you're holding the RJ45 in your right hand, 8 PAC in your right hand, if the clip is on the back side, the clip's facing away from you, and the opening is facing to the left, then pin 1 is at the top. This would be pin 1, and this would be pin 8. So what I do is once I have these separated, I will actually push down on the back of the connector like this, and that will help to keep the cables from separating. And I'll slide them up into place. Now one way you can tell whether the cable has gone all the way through is you can look at the side, and you can see on the side where the cable has gone all the way to the end of the RJ45, and you can look down through the top and you can see that the cable has gone all the way through the RJ45. One of the best ways to do it is to look at the very end of it, and on the very end you should be able to see copper from every single one of these cables coming through, and be able to see that there at the end, the copper shining back at you. So we push that up. I want to check to make sure that we've got our correct order. So we have white orange orange, white green blue, white blue green, white brown brown. And my jacket is as far up in there as I can get it. It's all the way to the very end. So then we'll get a set of crimps, and these are made for RJ45, RJ11, RJ12, 4 pairs, 4 pin, 6 pin, and 8 pin, or 8 position, 6 position, 4 position. These are made by Southwire. I have some that are made by Paladin. These are duckbill, is what we call these. The RJ45 slides into the end of them, and these will also crimp for coax cable. So slide these in the end, just like this, and then crimp the cable. And I usually squeeze it a few times. I just out of habit, I guess. In this entire video series, I'm going to show you guys how to make cables, how to set up keystone jacks for your horizontal cable. So if you're going through and you're making runs to go from one room to another, say you're going from a patch panel to an outlet in a bedroom or office, closet, wherever it is you're going with it, you always want to use a 110 jack. This is it's called a keystone or 110 style jack. This one's made for Cat 6, so you always want to make sure that you use the right type of cable for the right type of connector. You don't want to use Cat 5 and a Cat 6 connector. Cat 5 isn't rated as high, and one of the reasons you don't want to use Cat 5e or Cat 5 in a Cat 6 connector is that the gauge of the wire is different. Typically, Cat 6 is 23 gauge. Some of the cheaper stuff you'll get is 24 gauge, but the thicker the wire, 23 being thicker than 24 gauge, AWG, American Wire Gauge. The thicker the wire, the more electrons can be pushed down it. But so now we have one side crimped, connected, ready to go. Now on these, you could put a strain relief boot. I don't have any with me here today. And what that would do is that would help to take strain off of the connector itself. And it also covers the end of the clip, so if you have to pull this back out, the clip doesn't get hung on everything. If you guys ever pull these out of a rack, you know that they get hung on just about everything. So this is a stranded cable, right? Put a RG45 or APAC on one end. We're gonna do the same thing to the other. I've already stripped this one off. So separate this one out. And then take my scissors and cut this off. The little channel needs to come out. Then we'll separate these pairs as well. Now, I teach copper cabling. We usually we go through CTEC. You guys ever heard of CTEC training out of New Jersey? The training class is usually about a week. We go over every facet of copper cabling you can imagine. Of course, we do the same thing for fiber optics and for telephony or voice over IP. It's also a week-long course. But in that course, we cover patch panels, 110, 66 block, keystones, coax, you name it. I also talk about where you can run the cable, how you run the cable, what type of cable goes where. I'm not going to get into all that stuff on this video. Really just want to show you guys an easy way to make cables. So getting all the bends out, getting everything straight before you try to put it in the connector is paramount. I can usually make a connector in about 30 seconds. When I'm doing this for contract, as a contract job, as a cabling installer, low voltage installer, you typically don't make the patch cables. Usually get those pre-made. Typically when you're going in and running copper cable, low voltage cabling, you're using keystone jacks, patch panels, things of that nature. Just punching everything down. I'll do that in a later video, show you guys how to do that. So we have our pairs separated. We have pin 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8, all in that order. If you guys will show you that again. So white, orange, orange, white, green, blue, white, blue, green, white, brown, brown, right? So again, I'm going to squeeze them between my thumb and my forefinger, and I'm going to pull them back down through there. And what that does is it brings them closer together, but it keeps them separated. So these they're not hard to make. I make all my own patch cables for my house, and reason being is because I have some that are longer, and it's a whole lot cheaper to do this than it is to go out and buy them. So especially if you're doing this, contracting, you've already got a lot of material sitting around. So doing this making your own cables is a lot cheaper than it is going out and buying a cable. So like I say, about a thumbnail's length, and I guess depending on how long your thumbnail is, it's about a ½ inch. I want to keep sticking out the other end there. All right, grab your RG45, your APAC, clip facing away from you, the opening on your left-hand side if you're holding it in your right hand. You want to lay it in the back of the connector and kind of push down against the back of the connector. That'll help keep the pairs separated, so they go in the right spot. And see, this one messed up on me. When I let go, they separated. Now they're no longer flush. Just take them back out, trim them, put them back in. Now, I trimmed off just what wasn't flush. Everything else stays the same, because you don't want to trim off too much. And you can always pull it back out and trim off more. And every once in a while, I'll have one that the wire won't go all the way up. And this one, this one's just about perfect. If you guys see the end of it there, you should be able to see the copper shining back at you. And you can see the jacket's far up in there. But I used to take a pair of scissors and just tap on them. Tap the end of it to make sure that it's making its way all the way up. So I'll use the other pair of crimpers on this one. It's an 8-pin or 8 position. All right, so that one's done. That one's crimped down. And as you guys see with this, what it does, if you can see the little gold contact there, that gold contact goes through and it pierces the jacket on the bottom side of the wire. It goes through the stranded copper, And then as you can see, it actually makes an indentation where it's coming out the top. So you know you have a good connection there. Then now we're going to test it, to make sure that everything's flowing like it should be. Now in class, we have a pretty high dollar scanner, micro scanners from Fluke. I've used a lot of different ones. I've used Klein. Klein is actually the one I use in the field, mainly because I don't want to spend money on a Fluke. But Flukes are expensive, but they last a long time. They're really good. So you see, it gives you a length. You see it says 0 feet, and it does that through time delay whenever it's sending NVP down the wire. This is a responder. It's a transmitter, and it'll go through and it'll show you what the cable looks like. So we have pin 1 going to pin 1, 2 to 2, 3 to 3, 6 to 6, 4 to 4, 5 to 5, 7 to 8. So 7 to 7, 8 to 8. These are the way your pairs are laid out: 1, 2, 3, 6, 4, 5, 7, 8. So that's how you make a patch cable. Hope it helps you guys. Like I say, I've been doing this for a long time. I've literally made thousands of these. Your fingers get tougher over time for making cables, but as you can see, these are 2 well-made cables. Little clips go into place to actually hold the jacket and the wire in there. And I've seen a lot cables that were not working. Had to go back in and repair them. Where they punched one down. They either punched it down with horizontal cable or riser cable, meaning solid core, or they left a lot of cable sticking out of the jacket. And I've seen it where the cable is sticking out like this and the jacket's all the way down here, and all of your pairs are separated all the way down. Now, if that was a phone line, if you're using this for telephone, old POTS line, it wouldn't be that big of a deal. But if you're pushing data down it, especially as much data as we push down these, 10 gigabits per second on Cat6, that's 10 billion bits per second. You need everything to be as perfect as you can possibly get it. And having the jacket all the way down here and all of your pairs separated is just not the proper way to do it, and you're not going to get the right kind of speed out of it. So to get the full data throughput, you want to make sure that your pairs are separated only to the jacket, and the jacket goes all the way up inside there. And the reason you want the jacket all the way up in there, the insulation, is because this is stronger than this. If you have your jacket all the way down here, and you don't actually crimp it up inside there, then those little wires, they will bend back and forth, micro movements, fan running, machine jarring, whatever, over time, it will eventually break that copper. You want to make sure that this thing, that your insulation, your jacket is all the way up inside the RJ45 or the 8P AC connector. So that's all I got for that one, guys. Thank you.